Zinn's Mowers. On today's video we are servicing this 20-inch self-propelled lawn boy mower. This is a customer trade-in. He purchased another mower off of me and gave me this as partial payment, and I knocked a few bucks off. But anyway, on today's video we are going to try to get this mower up and operational and back on the market, so just stay tuned. As far as the features of this mower, this is a 20-inch cut rear-wheel drive unit, bagger mulcher combination. There is no side discharge, so if you're not going to be bagging, you will be mulching. And the bagger flap has been precast to act as a mulch block for when you're not using the bag. Of course, you still have to adjust your wheels at all 4 points. Now, powering this whole operation is this Briggs & Stratton engine with automatic choke. For those of you who are wondering, yes, I do have the cover shroud for this in the garage, which you will see later in the video. But anyway, this is a Briggs & Stratton engine with automatic choke, meaning you do not have to prime it. It primes itself and starts immediately once you set the bail bar and pull the rope. Or if this electric start worked, which this particular unit also does feature an electric start, we are not going to be using it, however, because we do not have the charger to it. Normally the electric starts never work on push mowers anyway when I get them, so I don't even worry about it. But anyway, let's get into getting this whole thing up and running. Okay, now I'm just going to make sure that this engine's worth putting this brand new carburetor on. I've already done this before the video. I'm just going to show you guys to do this before you even think about getting into a mower and getting too deep into it, rather it's worth it or not. But anyway, I bought this carb cleaner and we're going to go ahead and spray it in here. To.Taryl Fixes All does this too, so this will not hurt your engine. This is not starting fluid, this is regular carburetor cleaner. So just going to spray a little bit in here. All I got to do is pull the rope and see if she fires. If she at least fires, then we know she should be worth fixing. Maybe spray a little bit more in here. I know she'll run because I had her firing on carb spray before the video. Alrighty, now we're going to go ahead and start servicing her up and getting her ready. As far as the repairs to this unit that we are doing, brand new carburetor, brand new air intake gasket, brand new intake tube gasket, brand new blade, change of oil. FYI, if you do order this carburetor from Amazon, please make sure you get these 2 gaskets. If not, send it back, because I ordered a carburetor the day I got this mower earlier this week for the purposes of this video, and they didn't send me the gasket, so I'm currently in the process of sending that one back. I did order another one the same day, that way I'd have it for this video. But anyway, now as far as the old carburetor, this is what the bowl looks like. I did try to clean it, because normally I would clean these, but I got in here. I know you may or may not see it on the camera, but this bowl has started to corrode through, so I just felt comfortable replacing the carburetor. As far as the tools we were using, we used a Phillips head screwdriver to take the decorative cover off. We're using 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8, and 5/8 sockets to do this repair as well. But without further ado, we are going to get to repairing. Okay, I loosened this bolt up off camera. Of course, this is a 5/8 bolt. Goes to the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. We'll just take this off. Also, I'm draining that dirty oil. Just getting it up out of there while I got this mower on its side. Just way to kill these 2 birds with 1 stone. I do apologize if you guys don't like that reference, but it is what it is. Just throw that over there, because we're going to put this blade on. I'll just go ahead and do this while we're down here too. Remember that the bolt goes through the center hole. So we'll just line this up on the center hole here. We'll just slide this on. Remember, when we go back on here, the bolt's supposed to be turned to the right. So, and also FYI, when you're putting this blade on, make sure this lift portion is going upward. That way your cutting edge is coming down to cut the grass and then lift it into the bagger or to mulch it up. Just line up with this hole right here. Probably should grease these, but this is good for now. Make sure everything's lining up. Just go ahead and put this on now, and we'll start on the carburetor. Just gonna go ahead and finish putting this on. Just make sure these threads don't strip out either, because that'll be the end of this motor if they do. But these threads are good. We are using our 5/16 sockets to take these 3 bolts off that take this air cleaner base off. Remember, when you do take these off, please, because these are tiny little screws, so please put them in a safe place where you can find them when you're done and ready to put this back together. Okay, I've had a little bit of trouble getting these off. They must have been torqued to the factory specifications. Just going to try to line this back up on here. I'll get back on here once I get this off. Now that the air box is off, I'm using my 1/4" socket to take this thermostat control rod off. Please be careful when you do take this off and put it back on. Do not over tighten this, especially when you put it back on. I've learned this by experience that you will snap the thermostat piece off of the carburetor, rendering the carburetor useless. But anyway, we're going to take this off. Then we'll start taking the carburetor off. And if you don't know what you're doing, just take pictures while you're in here. Make sure these springs are good, not stretched out. If they are, also replace those as well when you're in here. Seems like these are pretty decent, so we'll keep them. But we're going to switch over to the 3/8 socket and back the carburetor off. Switching over to the 3/8 socket, we are going to begin to reach back here and take this carburetor off. This is the old junk carburetor, so we're not going to save anything off this. This is going right in the Kimball can, or whatever garbage service we have. Just reach back here. Just be careful when you're in here, not damage anything. Just back, get that out of there. Any way we can. We'll just take it off once the carburetor comes off. Now there's a linkage in here that we're going to have to carefully maneuver with and get the carburetor all the way off. I probably should have took the fuel line off, but anyway, if you see this little wire back here, that's where the linkage is. I'll just disconnect it from the gas tank for now. Then you'll slowly bend this carburetor up and off this linkage. Now we are off the linkage. Inspectors think we can save this fuel line. I did drop the bolt, but I have recovered it for the carburetor. Now we'll save this, clean this fuel line up with carb spray and save it. And we'll go ahead and start installing the new carburetor. Okay, now I'm going to put this fuel line onto this carburetor. Of course, we got to put it on this intake for the fuel. Just slide this hose on here. And I'm going to get a pair of pliers so we can adjust our hose clamp. I am sorry that I didn't tell you guys that we needed them, but we do. So I'm just going to slip these on here carefully. And I really don't like these clamps, but it's just a way of life. Just carefully grip onto it, carefully slide it over. These clamps are spring tension, and they love to pop out of place if given the opportunity. But anyway, we got our gas line on. Now, before I did this, I sprayed this out and off with carburetor spray. That way I can get all the paraffin out of there and whatnot. I did clean the gas tank out. Now, guys, please get a load of this. Just because you guys drain your gas tank at the end of the season, that doesn't mean that that does not mean that there's not gas in your gas line and in your carburetor. You think you might be safe, but there's gas going bad in your carburetor over the winter, and then when you go to put fresh gas in your mower, it still won't start, and that's probably why. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and install the carburetor now. For us to properly and successfully install this carburetor, I pulled out the new air intake tube gasket. This separates the carburetor from the engine block. We're going to find our intake tube in here. Sorry if the camera's a little out of focus, but we'll find the air intake tube and slip it around there. Now when you're in here, please inspect these intake tubes for damage, because I have gotten some of these motors where the intake tubes were busted and damaged, and you clean the carburetor as much as you want, but it won't run at all. But anyway, this one is good. We got our gasket on there. Now we will get our carburetor. Note the orientation. This butterfly is the throttle butterfly, which goes on the back side. This runs the automatic choke to the thermostat. So now we line this up. We'll go ahead and put this line on the tank. And I'll get you guys on the tripod so I can line up this linkage. Okay, I had to reorient my fuel line when I was trying to line up the governor linkage. Get my gas line back on the tank. Now I find my governor linkage here. If you guys can see it good, I'm just trying to make sure you can see. I got this governor linkage in my hand. You slip it through the hole on the throttle linkage on the carburetor. And you slowly ease it onto the engine so that you don't break that plastic butterfly. Make sure the gas line is going under the oil breather line, or over it I should say. And make sure it'll line up on the intake tube. Make sure this carburetor lines up with our intake tube. Now we will find our 3/8 bolts and we'll get this thing threaded back on here. And these can be a pain in the rear sometimes to get on and off, but it is what it is. We'll go ahead and we'll get it on here. I think we're lined up. Make sure you're threading in on both sides before you tighten them, because you don't want to have to take this back off and do the same thing over. I'll get back on here once I find that other bolt. Now we are mounting our carburetor. Just going to go ahead and tighten the bolts up. I did make sure I had them all lined up before I got them on here. Just going to have to transition over to here and just tighten this up. So I can get on the bolt. Hold on here. Just gonna go ahead and go around until you start getting some tightness on it. And we're gonna put the thermostat on once I get this tightened up. There we go. Now I will switch out to a 1/4-inch socket again. Let's line our thermostat up first. Make sure this little nub goes in the groove on this choke side of the carburetor. And make sure your bolt's going to line up inside this hole here. Just making sure this all lines up before we tighten anything down. Sure enough, we got it. Now we'll get it. Now, when you do tighten this bolt up, as I said earlier, please be careful, because if you tighten this up too hard, you will break this bolt hole off and you will not be able to use this carburetor at all. So just be careful here. Just going to go ahead and hand tighten it first. Just going to go ahead and slowly tighten up this thermostat rod. Do not over tighten. I can't stress that enough, because you can and possibly will break this off of this carburetor, rendering it useless. As soon as you fill it tight, do not go any further. Now we will go ahead and put our air box back on. Now note the orientation of this air box gasket. This air cleaner base does have pegs on it to put this gasket on. Note that this square part lines up with the square part, and you find the holes, the tiny holes that the pegs go on. We'll line this up. Then we'll get our 5/16 socket and put this onto the carburetor. First, we got to line up our breather hose on the block, or this hose that comes out of the block under the gas line. Just slip this on and we'll get our bolts and start tightening those. When you're putting this air box back on these motors, you tighten the bolts on the carburetor first always. Just going to go ahead and get this around. And now I did, before I even tighten any bolts, I do line up every bolt hole, bolt for bolt. That way I don't miss a hole while I'm tightening up a bolt and not have one on the other hole. And you got to make sure these are super tight. Don't over tighten them, of course, as with everything, but make sure that these are tight so that the airbox gasket will do its job. Just going to swap onto this bolt here. if you are careful enough, you could do all this with an impact. I do not. I do have a drill, but I feel more comfortable using a socket so I don't over tighten or strip anything, as you do not want to strip anything. You will regret it. Just make sure this is as tight as you can possibly get it. Then we'll tighten down that third bolt. Go ahead and do that off camera, and then I'll be back to get with an air filter to. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and fill this engine with oil. I did spill a little bit of this while I was opening it. It shouldn't hurt anything. I may use my open core to add a little bit in here. You slowly pour it. If you're not using a funnel especially, I'd prefer to use a funnel, but I couldn't find mine, and I just wanted to go ahead and get this done. No, it's not good to hurry through jobs, but if I can be careful enough, I can go ahead and get it done. Just find our dipstick and put it back in. It should be about full. If not, we'll add a little more. But let's get an air filter on this bad boy. Okay, I am sorry for the abrupt transition. We are filming at nighttime. I did have to go to work after I got the oil put in this engine, and I was pressed for time. But anyway, I found out that this choke control linkage was bound up, not allowing my thermostat to work, so I had to take the pull start off of here and mitigate that issue. Also, I do want to explain a few things about how the thermostat works. I've watched the to.Taryl Fixes All video on how this particular thermostat works. When your engine is running, it's supposed to spring open and close your choke and allow it to run. But now, if you open it and it's not springing back like it is now, then it's bad. Also, if you do take this air vane rod off, the proper name for this is the air vane, by the way. If you take this off and put it back on, it is supposed to go on the way you see it on here now. This little plastic part is not supposed to go through this hole here, or it will not work as it was designed. I really do love these thermostats in particular, because on these engines you can tell if they're bad by the way, if they're not springing back. to.Taryl Fixes All, discuss that in the video, which I have linked in the description. So just go watch that after you watch this if you want to. Also, in the morning when we get back in here, I'm going to go ahead and put the air filter in, get everything back together, and get her running again. Just stay tuned. Alright, before we bolt this shroud down, so I've got everything lined up, all the bolts are in, but they're not tight. I have checked my dipstick seal. I did want to make sure that this thermostat control rod is not binding anywhere. If it is, you'll have to take this back off and see what's going on. Ours is not binding. I have set up my 3/8 socket. We're going to go ahead and tighten up these bolts. There's 4 of these here, so we're just going to go as fast as we can. Just snug them, but don't strip them or anything. Just get them tight, but don't strip them. Let's transition over here. Okay, now we are going to keep our 3/8 socket because we do have to mount our gas tank, which I will go ahead and do real quick. Okay, before I do put the gas tank on, I just wanted to go over something about this bolt. This is a 3/8 head. It is only threaded on the far end here, and then inside the tank you'll have this plastic spacer before the engine block. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and start mounting the tank. Just make sure that this plastic spacer slips into this hole back here, and you're going to turn this tank around. Make sure your pull rope's going through the center hole, the ring keeper on the tank as I call it. But we're going to go ahead and get this lined up. I don't have the tripod out here right now, so it's going to be a little tougher for me. So I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff off camera. Okay, there's 3 bolts inside this ring. I don't know how good you guys can see them. There's 3 bolts, one right there, and right there. I'm just tightening these up. That way at least this motor's put together before I conclude for the night. I'm just going to go ahead and line up our socket and tighten down this last bolt. These are 5/16 bolts, just so you know, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't go over this when I was taking this apart, but I just did some things I just did off camera to save a little bit of time. So anyway, I think you guys are going to see me tomorrow, so I'll go ahead and get off here. Alrighty, now we're getting ready to put our air filter in for our test run. There are a few things I did do before I got to this point. I went through my parts pile and found another gas cap that'll fit this, because when I got the mower it didn't have a gas cap. I also topped the oil back off because I spilled some of it when I was filling this engine, and last night when I had to take the shroud off. Because this engine is supposed to have 18 ounces of oil, so I just wanted to make sure it had that sufficient amount. That way everything would operate smoothly and there would be no issues. Also made sure the blade was tight. Now, as far as this air filter, I do keep at least 10 of these on hand at any given time, because this is still a pretty common engine. I like working on them, so that's why I keep these air filters around. But anyway, to put this air filter on, we're going to slide it into this cutout right here. Now note these tabs here, because they're going to go into these holes on the air cleaner base, which is the part before the carburetor. So we're just going to slip this onto the air cleaner base. Make sure it's hinged. We're going to close the cover. Now you got to line up this bolt right here, and I normally just start it by hand, and then I'll get on it. Now with this bolt too, you can use a 5/16 socket or a flathead screwdriver, whichever you like. For the purposes of this video though, we're just going to go ahead and use a 5/16 socket, since that's what I have ready to roll. Just start it by hand. Just get on it with the 5/16. And it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey as always. Just try not to over tighten that either when you're doing this. And now it is time to put our decorative cover back on. Now we're going to put our decorative cover back on. What you would do to put the cover back on, you'd slide the pull rope handle through this hole. Of course mine is busted on the side, so I could have just slid the rope through it. But anyway, we'll just go ahead and slide that back on. Now there is a locking tab on the back of this decorative cover that locks in the hole back here. So whenever you do get this on, just line everything up. Make sure this tab is locked. Now there are two screw holes on this cover, right here and right here. And they take these Phillips screws. This is just a standard Phillips size, nothing special. If you do ever lose these screws, just wood screws with about the same length would work. Just be careful. But just going to make sure these are lined up, and we'll tighten this down. And I believe we are ready to test run it. Of course we are going to clean it up, but I'll do that off camera. We're going to clean it up before we get to Facebook Marketplace with it. Just going to go ahead and put this last screw in here, and we'll be ready for our test run. And now, the time that we all have been waiting for. It is now test run time. So to start this mower, this is the engine bail shut-off lever, so that if I release it, the engine would shut off. The bottom lever runs my self-propel. But anyway, let's get this engine started and do this test run. That's why it's in mulching configuration right now. But it's this little strip look. This is my test cutting area. I cut here because nobody really cares about the grass here. Sometimes people park their cars in between the driveway. Cut the grass pretty good, made it better for a brand new blade. Before we wrap things up, I did want to go over a few details about the self-propel system. Of course, I said that this bottom lever is the self-propel handle. If you follow the cable coming off that handle, you lead to this bottom cable here. This top one is your bail brake cable. But if at any time you don't feel like this mower is running at an appropriate speed, you get a 7/16 socket or 7/16 wrench. You loosen this up. If the mower is going too fast, it has too much tension, so you'll loosen the nut up, bring the cable this way, get it into a good adjustment and tighten it back up. Or if the mower is going not fast enough or too slow, you'll loosen the nut up, righty tighty lefty loosey, and then you'll pull a little bit of this out so you get all that slack out of the cable. Also, there is a bolt on the other side. This holds the key start. Of course, we're not using the key start because I don't have a battery charger for it and I'm not ordering one. But anyway, before we go, I do want to give my thoughts and opinions on this mower. This is a very nice mower. Toro Lawn Boy did not go wrong making this. They made this for that homeowner that has a small yard, yet and still they want a bagger mulch or combination mower that is self-propelled. I am so happy that they've partnered with Briggs & Stratton for this 6 3/4 horse engine with automatic choke. Yes, the automatic choke makes it easier to start. It saddens me that Briggs & Stratton no longer makes this engine through EPA regulations and cost-cutting measures on the end of Briggs & Stratton. I'm so happy that also, even though my electric starter doesn't work, I'm happy that Toro decided to put electric start on these for those people who can't operate the pull cord. But anyway, I do want to thank you guys for watching this video. I want to thank all 1,000 subscribers who are subscribed. Please continue to subscribe, continue liking the videos, continue the comments. I do like the comments. I'm very happy that I was able to get on here and show you the process of getting a trade-in mower back up on the market and whatnot, but also how you can service your own mower if you have a similar or this same mower. You can service it on your own without the assistance of a shop. But anyway, please, and if there is anything I did miss throughout the video, please address it kindly. I will not entertain any rude comments. But anyway, just want to thank you for watching, and until next time, go Tigers.